Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Trans Lesson Plan, your go-to podcast for transgender history. As always, I'm your host, Mari. And it is an absolute pleasure to have you all here today. As always, again, happy Transgender Awareness Week. As I mentioned in my previous episode, this particular bonus episode that I'm going to be releasing today is all commemorating Transgender Day of Remembrance. So I'm going to go a little bit more into TDOR, what it's about, the origin stories, how's it observed, and some other things as well regarding today's very special day. But before I do, as always I want to thank my new and returning listeners. For all my new listeners here, welcome. If this is your very first episode listening into the Trans Lesson Plan, sadly, it's like probably going to be one of my most saddest episodes out of all of them. But that's why we got 7 seasons worth for you to go back and listen to. Our podcast is not just about history. It serves as a platform for education, provide valuable insights into the transgender community. My goal is to inspire understanding, promote inclusivity, and spark conversations about the transgender community with this expert knowledge that you're getting. Each episode of our podcast is designed to be concise yet comprehensive, with a duration of about 15 to 20 minutes. Give you something to start with, and you can learn more at your own time. So, welcome. This is your very first time here. And like I said, I know today's episode is going to be sad, but hopefully you still gain a lot out of it as well. For my returning listeners, thank you for continuing to support the podcast. We are over, I think last time I checked, 30,000 listens, which is great. We are close to the 5,000 subscriber mark. So if it wasn't for you all sharing and my very minimum amount of social media podcast, very small amount of social media advertising for this thing, man. It's mostly coming from you all, though, to be completely honest. Because like I said, the thing here is like social media for me is a lot with all the moving pieces I do behind the scenes as well. So I don't have as much time. So you all really doing more word of mouth, checking out wherever you get, you learn from my podcast, means that if I did more, we would have a large scale. But like it's still a large scale now, even to have almost 5,000 subscribers and followers listen to this podcast on a weekly basis. And also just being like, you all are the reason why we have this much success. So thank you all so much for continuing to support the podcast. But continue to tell your family, your friends, however you find me, continue to push it out there as much as you can. Because although, yes, it's part of my job as well, I do a lot of things in the background. So I apologize in advance for that. But thank you all so much for continuing to support. As I mentioned before, this podcast episode is going to be a day of remembrance for all of our trans family who we've lost in the year 2024. So I want to get into that context. I want to start with really the ordinance. So for those who are new here, like I said, you never heard of TDOR. Transgender Day of Remembrance, often abbreviated as TDOR, is an annual observance that honors the memory of transgender individuals whose lives were lost in acts of anti-transgender violence. It is a day of reflection, mourning, and a call to action for a more inclusive and safe world for everyone. So I'll start with the origins of this very important day. TDOR was founded in 1999 by a transgender advocate by the name of Gwendolyn Ann Smith. It began really as a visual to honor Rita Hester, who was a transgender woman who was killed in 1998. And this initial event, commemorating the 1-year anniversary of Hester's death, also remember all the transgender individuals whose lives were lost to violence in that year. From this very important beginning, TDOR grew into a worldwide observance. Now you might be wondering, What exactly is Transgender Day of Remembrance? And as I mentioned, it's observed annually on November 20th. Like I said, on this day, we all come together around the world to remember and honor those we've lost. Now, you might be wondering now, how exactly is TDOR observed? And in most ways, what you're going to see today, if you are a advocate volunteer, you keep up really a lot of social media, you may see a lot of the common ways that we are observing TDR, which is through vigils, right? These are usually hosted by local transgender advocates or LGBTQ plus organizations. It can be held at various locations, sometimes like community centers, parks, places of worship, and other venues. And in the city of Atlanta, I got to get a list for you all, and it's probably going to be too late because by the time I post this episode, it'll be too late. So I'm going to try my best to do it on the TLP Instagram ahead of time of like places in Atlanta that you can check out if you want to go to a vigil, and other venues too as well. And the key part of these vigils is the reading of the names, which is a list of those who we've lost, who have been killed through this current year due to anti-transgender violence. I will be reading off the names for the year 2024 momentarily. But like I said, I just want to go through this episode mostly before I get to that part. It'll be towards the end. It's important to note that TDOR isn't really just about mourning. It's also about raising awareness, right? The United States, for example, has officially recognized this day to affirm the humanity and human rights of transgender individuals globally. And it is a reminder that transgender individuals are a part of every country, every culture, and every faith tradition that we are all either are or aren't a part of. So when we talk about why this day is necessary, the sad reality is that transgender individuals experience disproportionately high levels of homicide and assault. Our families and loved ones, too, often see no justice. So this day serves as a stark reminder of the work that still needs to be done to ensure the safety and acceptance of transgender individuals throughout the world. Now, if we look at some of the sobering statistics from the year 2024, according to the data provided, and I'm reviewing most of this from the Human Rights Campaign, who was very adamant about keeping up in real time about these statistics. 76% of victims were people of color, with 52% being Black transgender women specifically. Now, these highlights the intersectionality of violence against the transgender community, right? Where factors of like race, compound the risks faced by transgender individuals. The data also shows that 59% of victims were killed with a gun, underlying the deadly nature of this violence. And perhaps the most heartbreaking one is that 35% of victims were killed by someone who was romantic or a sexual partner who known the killer, a friend, or even a family member as well. People who we should consider to be, sources of love and support. Another concerning statistic is that 41% of victims were misgendered or dead named by authorities or the press. And this means that even in death, right, many transgender individuals face disrespect and erasure of their identities. And it's a stark reminder of the importance of respecting people's identities, both in life and in death. Now, you might be wondering, how are these cases identified? How are they tracked? And as I just mentioned, organizations like the Human Rights Campaign monitor really local news and social media on a daily basis to be able to identify these cases. They may also receive direct reports from victims' loved ones to be able to share. However, it's important to note that not every death, as I mentioned in my previous episode, of a transgender or gender nonconforming or non-binary person is included in these statistics. There's, very specific criteria for inclusion, right? So the death may have occurred, in the United States. That includes obviously all of our outlying American territories. And It must have been committed by another person, either directly or through contributions to the circumstances that resulted in the death. The cause of the death must be confirmed by authorities to be a homicide and or caused by another person. And violence, including structural violence, must be a component of the circumstances. So for these particular statistics, it's a little bit different. Now, it's a complex process, right? Despite best efforts, sometimes there isn't enough evidence available to determine if a case should be included in formal reporting. In these instances, how the HRC kind of includes the victim on a separate page. It's contributing to the monitor of these cases and worked with loved ones, advocates, and authorities being able to call for further investigations. Sometimes, like I said, some cases may not be put to the forefront because the families may not be aware of the individual's identity as well. So sometimes this number could possibly be higher, but depending on how the loved ones or the family members put into light this individual, they may not also be counted into this count as well. So it may be a higher number than what we think as well. So in all, the impact really of Transgender Day of Remembrance or transgender history really can't be understated. And like I said, this is a history podcast. So being able to have this serve as a yearly reminder of the ongoing struggles faced by the transgender community by bringing attention to violence and discrimination faced by transgender individuals, TDOR has helped galvanize support for transgender rights and push for societal change. This day has become a focal point for activism, for education, even really for community building as well. It's a time when the stories of those lost are shared, ensuring that they are not forgotten, that their deaths were not in vain. And TDOR has played a crucial role in raising awareness about transgender issues among the general public and helping to foster understanding and acceptance. Moreover, TDOR has contributed to the documentation of violence against transgender individuals. Being able to carefully track and report of these deaths have provided valuable data that could be used to advocate for policy changes and increase protections for the transgender community. So I want to emphasize that while TDOR is a kind of like solemn, occasion, it is also a call to action, right? It reminds us of the work that still needs to be done to create a world where transgender individuals can live full lives of dignity without fear of violence or harm. So you might be wondering, what can you do? Like I said, whether you're a part of the community or an ally of the community, the biggest thing I always like to say is obviously educate yourself about transgender issues, support transgender rights organizations or trans-owned organizations, attend or organize a TDOR visual in your community, because in most major cities we have them, but in those smaller cities, find a safe space that you can be able to hold these visuals. And perhaps really most importantly, be an ally at all times in your daily life. Respect people's identities, stand up against transphobia when encountered, create inclusive spaces within your community wherever you are. Because I always like to tell people, it's everyone's responsibility to ensure acceptance and support for transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming individuals, right? Until we really achieve this goal, we will have to continue to speak loudly and clearly to end transphobic violence and homicide. So yeah, go out to a TDR event, which, like I said, I know in major cities they will be there. Like I said, the city of Atlanta, I'm not sure which ones are put together just yet. I know they're out there. I probably should do my research before this episode. But let me see if I can pull it up real quick for y'all while I'm doing pretty good on time. The National Center for Civil Rights, the National Center for Civil and Human Rights will be hosting a Transgender Day of Remembrance from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. tonight. I'm going to try to release this episode early in the morning so that y'all can be able to hear this. It is virtual. I will put the website link in the episode description so y'all can sign up for that. Hopefully it's not too late for that. Bear with me while I hit the backspace a couple of times. If you can, Georgia Tech will be hosting a Transgender Day of Remembrance. I am unsure where because it doesn't say. But I got connections at Georgia Tech. I'll put that information in the episode description as well. Let's see. I don't see anything else as of yet. So I would recommend the National Center for Civil and Human Rights event. Like I said, it is virtual. I don't think it's in person, but you can check that out. If I do hear anything from in-person stands, I will let you all know, and I will share that amongst my Instagram on the Trans Lesson Plans Instagram page, just as a heads up. You can. It is in person too as well. The National Center for Civil and Human Rights. But if you can't make it in person, you can absolutely make it virtual, or at least it looked like it was in person. I might be wrong, and I apologize if I am. I know the people who's running it, so I'll get some more information for y'all. But yeah. That will wrap up today's episode. I'm gonna go ahead and read off the names of those we've lost this year. If you do not mind doing a moment of silence for them while I read off these names. For the closure of this episode. Sorry, y'all. I'm filling this thing out, which I probably should do for you. Okay, here we go. Santonio San Coleman, Honey Daniels, Kasim Omar, Red, also known as Barbie, Vanity Williams, Tyvion Lathan, Dylan Gurley, Monique Brooks, Kenji Spurgeon, Shannon Boswell, Paulie Likens, Liara Sai, Jaslyn Johnson, Yellow Robert Clark Jr., Michelle Henry, Brandon TDOR Thomas, Reina Hernandez, Keita B, Star Brown, Sasha Williams, Andrea Dioria dos Passos, River Neveja Goodard, T. Arnold, Africa Perlita Garcia, Mirxas Medina, Alex Taylor Franco, Diamond Brigman, Righteous TK Chevy Hill, Kitty Monroe. Again, we want to share our condolences, our love to our fallen trans family for the year 2024. And although we still have a few more days to weeks to the end of the year, yes, this number could go up within the next couple of weeks. And with that, we will still be commemorating and loving on our family that we've lost for the year 2024. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Trans Lesson Plan. If you'd like to follow us on Instagram, you can at the Trans Lesson Plan on Twitter and Instagram. And I just want to say that I love you all. Please stay safe. And I will see you all on Sunday. Peace.